Hello everyone, this is Inky. This video will be the first of a series of video on improving your mindset in terms of preparing for math competitions and doing math competitions. So the topic of today's video is what do you do when you do worse on a math competition than you were expecting or than you could have potentially done. So, this happens to a lot of people, pretty much everyone who does math competition seriously. Maybe one day you take the AMC 10, you've been getting around, let's say 115 on practice AMC 10s, but on the day of the test, for some reason, it didn't feel harder, but you just made some mistakes or had a bad day or whatever, and, you scored a 96 instead of 115-ish. So, it may seem very disappointing and just disappointing that you didn't do as well as you hoped. But in this video, I guess I'll talk about maybe what are some things you can and should do to process your emotions better when you don't do as well as you hope. And this could apply to other things like, I don't know, other competitions, but I'll be talking specifically about the context of math competitions. So, it's normal to be a bit sad, disappointed, maybe even a bit angry at yourself that, you made 3 mistakes that you shouldn't have made on the test, and it cost you, either AME qualification or just, not meeting the goals that, you had set for yourself. So I think probably the best way to deal with this is in sort of like a improvement focused mindset is, do be hard on yourself, own your mistakes. Don't blame the test writer. It's not because the test writer made the questions tricky. It's because you could have prepared more yourself and could have recognize what are some common pitfalls that people might have on certain types of problems beforehand. So it's good to be hard on yourself, but not in a negative way. You should do it in a very optimistic way where you're like, darn, I could have done so much better. And then a few days later it's like, well, all I can do now is just do better next year, right? So I'll work as hard as I can, do so many problems that you recognize what are the common archetypes of mistakes you tend to make the most, and then how can you kind of make checks for yourself to not make those mistakes in the future, because I still make careless mistakes, and but at the very least I know how to check my work in a way that I'm on the lookout for my 3 common most types of careless mistakes that I'll make. You may also want to reevaluate your strategy, not fly through the first 15 questions if you made mistakes in those, or just analyze the situation properly and work hard for next year. And on the topic of being hard on yourself, you don't have to be too hard on yourself. At the end of the day, it's only a math competition, and even though you may have spent let's say 500 hours in the last year preparing for a certain math competition, you should be hard on yourself, but instead of taking it as I should have spent my time doing something else, you can say, well, now I'll use this as this setback or failure as motivation to work even harder for next year. If it's your last year, you can apply that motivation to college related things, whether they be math related or not. And just remember, at the end of the day, math competitions, they don't determine your self-worth or anything. Be kind to yourself. Everyone deserves to be respected, both by themselves and by others. regardless of how well they do on a math competition or like some sports competition or music competition. Everyone has lots of value, and you should be loved by both yourself and by others. Just for who you are and not how well you do on a certain math competition. Even if you end up not making your goals, it shouldn't feel like you've all that time you spend problem solving for the AIME was wasted, right? Like you should really ask yourself, did I gain something from the experience at the end of like 12th grade or whenever you stop doing math competitions? Did I gain anything? Did I make some friends along the way? Did I learn something interesting and worthwhile in my math studies while studying for the math competitions, even though I might not have done as well as I potentially could have? If the answer is yes to both those questions, then yeah, the journey of doing math competitions was worth it. The point of doing math competitions, it's not necessarily to, I mean, it's gonna sound weird, but it's not necessarily to always do as best as you can do, even though that'd be great if you could. I think some of the learning experience of the journey actually comes from doing poorly on one or two tests, at least 1 or 2 or 3 years of high school, and then learning to kind of deal with that like failure or setback and process your emotions in a healthy way, right? Like don't blame test writers. You should own up to the mistakes that you made. So yeah, at the end of the day, math competitions, they're just, it's a math competition. You take a test, you solve math problems. Hopefully some of the math problems are interesting. Hopefully you can, think more about the interesting math problems after the time limit. Since most of the main ones nowadays are designed in a way where you can't solve all of them in the time limit. But, at the end of the day, it should be a learning experience and also hopefully a social experience. So, to summarize, do be hard on yourself, but use that like failure or setback to do better next year. Have a better mindset for next year and work even harder for next year. A lot of the people who can consistently, let's say, qualify for, let's say, Math Counts Nationals or USA JMO or AMO, maybe they work so hard, they over prepare in such a way that, let's say the cutoff on average is 220. Then maybe they over prepare so that they can, get 235 index consistently. And it's so that if they have a bad day on the AMC or AME the next year, they have at least a bit of cushion. And it's not necessarily that Olympiad qualification is like the end all be all, right? Like it's totally fine to just, study some aspect of Olympiad math, and if it's fun and interesting, great. And even if you don't end up qualifying for the Olympiad at the end of the year, you still might have learned something worthwhile and interesting, and it might have still been like a good experience, right? Like the analogy that I like to make, since I used to play piano and still do, is you shouldn't just play piano and practice, let's say, 4 pieces, in the whole year just for that one piano competition at the end of the year, where you have to play those 4 pieces under a time limit. Like hopefully you enjoy the music enough that you learn some other pieces other than those 4 like competition prep pieces, and you like the experience of practicing and learning and getting better at piano, not just winning some award at some artificially man-created math or piano competition. So the same could be said about math competitions. At the end of the day, hopefully you gain something valuable from working hard at something that's challenging and enjoyable at the same time. Since it's a good experience to have. It's not good to just go through high school where you don't do anything challenging or interesting to you, since that would not be a good use of your late teenage years. So I'm rambling a bit. So, but those are just some of my thoughts on math competitions, and just a good kind of looking back mindset, and also how to have a more improvement focused mindset, especially when you do worse or much worse than you feel like you could have done in a certain important math competition. So yeah, I might make a few more videos in this topic of improving mindset, since this seems to be a topic that a lot of people might struggle with. Like, people talk about how do you reduce silly mistakes on math competitions? How do you learn X topic in X amount of time? How do you learn, and how do you get better? But not as many people talk about the psychological aspect of, how do you deal with setbacks? How do you deal with not reaching your goals? These are all important things that are part of one's math competition journey. So it's worth talking about. So I may or may not make more videos on topics of this type in the future. But if you have any questions or comments or concerns, just let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. That's a good place to stop.